115 motorcycles lined up outside a small house in Tonopah, Nevada. Leather-clad bikers, each wearing the death's head patch of the Hells Angels, stood in formation, silent, imposing, undeniable. Inside, an 8-year-old girl named Paige stood frozen behind her terrified mother, her heart pounding as a knock echoed through their home. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't revenge. This was something the entire town of Tonopah never saw coming. 3 weeks earlier, Paige had made a choice that broke every rule her mother taught her. She'd approached a stranded biker everyone else ignored. She'd tried to give him her birthday money, and now they'd all come back. But why? The desert wind carried dust across Highway 95 as Paige Thornton pressed her nose against the passenger window of her mother's aging Ford pickup. 8 years old today, and the world looked different somehow. Brighter, fuller of possibility. The $50 bill her grandmother had sent sat folded carefully in her pocket, smooth and crisp against her fingers. $50 felt like a fortune in Tonopah, Nevada, where the population barely topped 2,500, and the nearest real city lay over 200 miles away. "Stop fidgeting," her mother Jennifer said without looking over. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white against the cracked leather. "We're almost at the store." Paige settled back against the worn seat, watching the endless expanse of sagebrush and sand roll past. Tonopah stretched along the highway like a handful of buildings thrown across the desert floor. A few gas stations, a grocery store, a handful of motels that had seen better days, and the Mizpah Hotel, standing tall as a reminder of mining boom days long past. The October sun beat down mercilessly, despite the approaching evening, turning the desert into a shimmering ocean of heat waves and shadow. The Thornton home sat on the eastern edge of town, a small ranch-style house with peeling white paint and a yard more dirt than grass. Jennifer worked double shifts at the local diner, saving every penny since Paige's father had left 3 years ago. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that had always been enough for Paige. "Can we get ice cream after?" Paige asked, hope threading through her voice. "For my birthday?" Jennifer's expression softened slightly. "Maybe, if there's enough left after groceries." The truck rattled as they pulled into the parking lot of Miller's General Store, the only real grocery option in town, unless you wanted to drive to Goldfield or Hawthorne. Paige unbuckled her seatbelt, already planning how she'd spend her birthday money. Maybe new art supplies. Maybe that book about horses she'd been eyeing for weeks. Maybe— "Stay close," Jennifer warned as they climbed out, "and don't wander off." Paige nodded, but her attention had already caught on something unusual. At the far end of the parking lot, near the adjacent gas station, a massive motorcycle sat tilted awkwardly on its kickstand. Even from a distance, she could see tools scattered on the ground beside it, and a man crouched low, his back to them. He wore black leather from head to toe, and even in the dying light, she could make out patches and emblems covering his vest. Her mother saw it too. Jennifer's hand shot out, gripping Paige's shoulder firmly. "Inside, now!" "But Mom—" "I said now, Paige." Her mother's voice had gone tight, the way it did when she was scared but trying not to show it. "That's a biker. Hells Angels from the looks of it. Those people are dangerous." Paige glanced back as her mother steered her toward the store entrance. The man hadn't moved, still bent over his motorcycle, and something about the slump of his shoulders made him look more tired than dangerous. She wanted to ask why bikers were bad, what made them different from anyone else, but her mother's grip on her shoulder left no room for questions. Inside Miller's, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a harsh white glow. The store smelled like old linoleum and the faint sweetness of produce going soft. Jennifer grabbed a cart and started down the first aisle with purpose, tossing in the basics: bread, milk, eggs, cheap pasta, canned vegetables. Paige trailed behind, her mind still on the man outside. "Why are bikers dangerous?" she finally asked, keeping her voice low. Her mother didn't slow down. "They just are. Gangs, criminal activity, violence. Nothing you need to worry about, as long as you stay away from them. But how do you know? Have you ever talked to one?" Paige Lynn Thornton. Jennifer stopped the cart and turned to face her daughter fully. "I don't need to talk to a rattlesnake to know it'll bite. Some things you just know. Now drop it." But Paige couldn't drop it. While her mother continued shopping, she found herself drifting toward the front windows, peering out into the parking lot. The biker was standing now, tall and broad-shouldered, running a hand through his dark hair in what looked like frustration. His motorcycle remained stubbornly broken, and the tools scattered around him suggested he'd been at this for a while. As Paige watched, an older couple emerged from the gas station convenience store. They took one look at the biker and immediately changed direction, giving him a wide berth as they hurried to their car. The man, Ryan, though Paige didn't know his name yet, noticed. He didn't react, didn't call out or move toward them. He just watched them go with an expression Paige recognized from her own reflection sometimes. Hurt, trying to hide behind indifference. "Paige, come help me carry these." She turned away from the window reluctantly, helping her mother load the last few items into the cart. At the register, Mrs. Chen rang up their groceries with efficient movements, her weathered hands moving quickly across the scanner. "Saw that biker outside," Mrs. Chen said quietly to Jennifer. "Been there for over an hour. Keeps trying to fix his bike. Sheriff drove by twice already, just watching. As long as he stays outside, I don't care what he does," Jennifer replied, handing over cash. "Come on, Paige. Let's get home before dark." But as they pushed the cart toward the exit, Paige's steps slowed. Through the window she could see Ryan sitting on the curb now, his head in his hands. The tools lay abandoned beside his motorcycle, and his shoulders rose and fell with what might have been a heavy sigh or something more defeated. Nobody was helping him. The gas station attendant had gone back inside. Cars pulled in, refueled, and left without their drivers so much as glancing in his direction. And Ryan just sat there, alone in a town that had already decided what he was without ever asking who he might be. Paige's hand moved to her pocket, fingers brushing against the $50 bill. Her birthday money, her fortune. She thought about the art supplies, the books, the ice cream. Then she looked at Ryan again, at the way he sat so still, and something inside her chest tightened. "Mom," she said quietly, "I want to help him." Jennifer had already loaded two bags into the following truck. Paige's gaze, and her expression hardened immediately. "Absolutely not. But he's stuck. His bike is broken and nobody's helping, and that's not our problem." Jennifer's voice carried an edge that usually meant the discussion was over. "Get in the truck, Paige. But it's my birthday money. I can spend it how I want, right?" "No." The single word fell like a hammer. "Not on that, not on him. Do you understand me?" Paige's eyes stung, but she blinked the tears back. "You always say we should help people who need it. You say kindness matters. Kindness to people who deserve it. Yes, that's different." "How?" Paige's voice rose slightly, frustration bleeding through her usual obedience. "How is it different? You haven't even talked to him. You don't know if he's bad or good. You just decided because of what he's wearing." Jennifer opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, she looked uncertain, caught between her protective instincts and the values she'd always tried to instill in her daughter. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by firm resolve. "Get in the truck." Paige climbed into the passenger seat, her birthday money still in her pocket and her heart heavy with a feeling she couldn't quite name. As her mother started the engine, Paige watched Ryan through the side mirror. He stood up slowly, began gathering his tools with movements that spoke of resignation. He was giving up, Going to leave his motorcycle there and walk or call for help that probably wouldn't come. The truck started to reverse out of the parking space, and Paige made a decision. "Mom, I need to use the bathroom, really bad." Jennifer paused, foot on the brake. "Paige, please, I can't hold it all the way home." Sighing heavily, Jennifer pulled back into the space. "Make it quick." And I mean quick. Paige practically flew out of the truck, but instead of heading for the store's bathroom, her feet carried her across the parking lot toward the gas station. Her heart hammered against her ribs, partly from nerves and partly from the thrill of disobedience. She'd never deliberately gone against her mother before, not like this. Ryan was loading tools into a worn saddlebag when Paige approached. Up close, he looked even more intimidating. Well over 6 feet tall, arms marked with intricate tattoos that disappeared under his leather vest. A thick beard that couldn't quite hide a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The Hells Angels patch on his vest seemed to glow in the fading sunlight, skull and wings bold and unapologetic. "Excuse me?" Paige said, her voice smaller than she'd intended. Ryan turned, and for a moment, genuine surprise crossed his features. His eyes, brown and tired, widened slightly as he took in the small girl standing before him, clearly out of place and probably where she wasn't supposed to be. "Hey there," he said slowly, cautiously. His voice was deep, but not unkind. "You okay, kid? You lost?" "No, Paige pulled the $50 bill from her pocket, holding it out with both hands like an offering. "Your motorcycle is broken, and you look hungry, and nobody's helping you because of how you look, which isn't fair. This is my birthday money. I want you to have it, for food or for fixing your bike or whatever you need." Ryan stared at the money, then at Paige, then back at the money. Several expressions flickered across his face, too quickly to read. Shock, confusion, something that might have been pain. He didn't reach for the bill. He cleared his throat. "That's real kind of you, but I can't take your birthday money. That's yours. You should get something nice for yourself." "I am getting something nice," Paige insisted, pushing the money closer. "I'm getting to help somebody. That feels good. That's worth more than art supplies." "Art supplies," Ryan repeated, a ghost of a smile touching his lips despite himself. "You like to draw?" "I love to draw, mostly horses and desert landscapes, but that's not important right now. Please take it. You need it more than I need new pencils." Ryan's jaw worked silently. He looked past Paige toward the parking lot, and she knew without turning that he could probably see her mother's truck, could probably see Jennifer searching for her daughter with growing panic. "Your mom know you're over here?" he asked quietly. Paige's silence was answer enough. Ryan exhaled slowly, then crouched down to be at eye level with Paige. Up close, she could see that his eyes weren't just tired, they were kind. Weathered and guarded, yes, but fundamentally kind, in a way that no amount of leather or patches could hide. "Listen," he said gently. "What you're doing right now? It's one of the bravest things I've seen in a long time. But I can't take your money, and you need to get back to your mom before she has a heart attack, okay?" "But no buts." His voice stayed gentle but firm. "I'll figure something out. I always do. But you've already given me something worth more than $50. "What's that?" Ryan's smile was small but genuine. "You reminded me that not everyone in the world looks at me and sees a monster. That matters more than you know." "Paige!" Jennifer's voice cut across the parking lot, sharp with fear and anger. "Paige Thornton, you get over here right now!" Paige looked back at her mother, who was striding toward them with fury in every step. She looked back at Ryan, who had straightened up, his expression carefully neutral as he prepared for confrontation. "My name's Paige Thornton," she said quickly. "I live on Desert View Road, the little white house with the broken mailbox. If you ever need anything, you can find me there." "I'll remember that," Ryan said. Then, louder as Jennifer approached, "Your daughter's got a good heart, Mom. You should be proud." Jennifer reached them and immediately pulled Paige behind her, creating a physical barrier between her daughter and the biker. "Stay away from my child." "Yes, ma'am." "Not trying to cause trouble." Ryan's hands went up in a placating gesture. "She came over to me, but I was just sending her back. I don't care what story you're spinning. We're leaving. Now." Paige allowed herself to be dragged away, but she looked back over her shoulder at Ryan. He stood watching them go, one hand raised in a small wave that looked more sad than anything else. The $50 bill was still in Paige's hand, forgotten in the rush. The truck ride home was silent and tense. Jennifer's knuckles were white on the steering wheel again, her jaw set in a hard line. Paige stared out the window, watching the desert fade into twilight, and tried to understand why showing kindness had felt wrong to everyone except her and Ryan. They were pulling into their driveway when Jennifer finally spoke. "You ever do something like that again, ever approach someone like that, and you'll be grounded until you're 18. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mom." "I'm serious, Paige. Those people are dangerous. I don't care how nice he seemed. I don't care what you think you saw. They're not like us. They're not safe." "He didn't hurt me," Paige said quietly. "He was nice. He told me to come back to you. This time." Jennifer turned off the engine and twisted in her seat to face her daughter. "This time he was nice. But next time, you might not be so lucky. Promise me you'll stay away from people like that." Paige wanted to argue. She wanted to say that judging someone by their clothes or the patches on their vest wasn't fair, wasn't right, wasn't what her mother had taught her about treating people equally. But Jennifer's eyes were bright with unshed tears, shiny with a fear that Paige didn't fully understand, but could feel radiating like heat from a summer sidewalk. So instead she said, "I promise," and hoped she wouldn't have to break it. That night, Paige lay in bed with her birthday money still in her pocket and stared at the ceiling. Through her window, she could see stars scattered across the desert sky like diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably still trying to fix his motorcycle, still being avoided and judged, still alone. She pulled the $50 bill out and smoothed it flat on her blanket. The paper was crisp and new, full of possibility. But holding it now didn't bring the joy it had this morning. It felt heavy somehow, weighted with the memory of Ryan's tired eyes and the way he'd said she'd given him something more valuable than money. In the darkness, Paige whispered a quiet prayer to no one in particular. She prayed that Ryan would fix his motorcycle. She prayed he'd find somewhere warm to sleep and something good to eat. She prayed that someday people would see past his leather vest to the kind eyes underneath. And she prayed that she'd have the courage to be kind again when the world told her not to be. Outside, the Nevada wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying her words into the vast, indifferent desert. The next morning dawned clear and hot. The way every morning in Tonopah seemed to dawn, Paige dressed for church in her nicest sundress, a hand-me-down from a cousin in Reno that was a size too big but still presentable. Jennifer moved through the house with determined efficiency, making breakfast and gathering her Bible and purse with practiced movements. They didn't talk about yesterday. The tension from the gas station hung in the air between them like smoke, visible but unacknowledged. Paige ate her cereal in silence, watching her mother's tight expression and wondering if kindness was supposed to create this much conflict. Desert Valley Community Church sat on the north end of town, a modest building with white siding and a bell tower that hadn't held a bell in decades. Pastor Williams led a congregation of about 60 families. Everyone knew everyone, and rumors spread faster than wildfire in dry brush. As the Thorntons pulled into the gravel parking lot, Paige could already see clusters of people gathered near the entrance, talking in low, animated voices. Right there by the gas station. At least 2 hours, just sitting there. Glad Sheriff Dawson kept an eye on him. Jennifer's jaw tightened. She took Paige's hand, perhaps more firmly than necessary, and guided her toward the church entrance. But they didn't make it 3 steps before Martha Brennan intercepted them, her weathered face creased with concern and poorly concealed excitement at having news to share. "Jennifer, honey, did you see that biker yesterday, the one at Miller's?" "We saw him," Jennifer said curtly. "We didn't engage." "Well, thank heavens for that. Can you imagine? A Hell's Angel right here in our town. I heard he was casing the place, looking for houses to rob later." Paige's hand tightened involuntarily around her mother's. "That's not true. He was just fixing his motorcycle." Martha's attention swiveled to Paige like a hawk spotting movement in the brush. "Oh? And how would you know that, sweetheart?" Because we drove past him," Jennifer cut in smoothly, her grip on Paige's hand becoming almost painful. "Anyone could see he was having mechanical trouble. That doesn't mean we need to concern ourselves with it. Excuse us, Martha." She pulled Paige inside before Martha could ask more questions, but Paige could feel eyes following them as they found their usual pew. The church buzzed with quiet conversation, and she caught fragments as they passed. Dangerous, criminal, should have run him out of town. Pastor Williams, a gentleman in his 60s with more hair in his ears than on his head, took the pulpit with his usual warm smile. "Good morning, beloved. Let us open with a word of prayer." As the congregation bowed their heads, Paige kept her eyes open, looking around at all the people she'd known her entire life. Mrs. Chen from the grocery store sat 3 rows ahead. Mr. Foster, who owned the auto repair shop, was to their left. The Morrison family filled an entire pew near the back, their 5 children squirming restlessly. These were good people, kind people. They brought casseroles when someone was sick and organized fundraisers when families hit hard times. They helped each other, cared for each other, treated each other with compassion and grace. But yesterday, they'd all driven past Ryan without a second glance. They'd seen someone in need and decided he didn't deserve help because of what he wore, what he represented, what they assumed he must be. Pastor Williams launched into his sermon, and Paige tried to pay attention. He was talking about the Good Samaritan, about helping those in need, regardless of who they were or where they came from. The irony wasn't lost on Paige. She watched the congregation nod along, absorbed in the message, apparently blind to the contradiction between Sunday morning doctrine and Saturday evening behavior. "The Samaritan didn't ask if the beaten man deserved help," Pastor Williams said, his voice carrying through the small church. "He didn't check his background or judge his character. He saw someone suffering and chose compassion. That, my friends, is the heart of faith, choosing kindness even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult." Paige wanted to stand up and shout. She wanted to ask everyone in the room why they could nod along to this sermon, but had driven past Ryan like he was invisible. She wanted to know how they reconciled preaching compassion on Sunday with practicing judgment every other day of the week. But she was 8 years old, and 8-year-olds didn't interrupt church services. So she sat still and silent, her hands folded in her lap, and felt something inside her chest harden just a little bit. A small kernel of understanding that the world often talked about kindness more than it practiced it. After the service, Jennifer kept them moving quickly toward the truck, but they were intercepted again, this time by Sheriff Tom Dawson, a barrel-chested man with a thick mustache and eyes that missed nothing. "Morning, Jennifer. Paige." He nodded at them both, then focused on Jennifer. "Wanted to let you know we encouraged that biker to move along this morning. Found him sleeping in his truck behind the gas station. No criminal record, surprisingly. But we made it clear he's not welcome to linger." "Good," Jennifer said firmly. "Thank you, Tom." "Did he fix his motorcycle?" Paige asked before she could stop herself. Sheriff Dawson glanced down at her. Eventually, yeah. Took him till nearly midnight, but he got it running. Why? Just curious. But Page's heart had lifted slightly at the news. He'd fixed it. He'd managed without her help, just like he'd said he would. For some reason, knowing that made her feel better and worse at the same time. Better because he was okay. Worse because he'd had to do it completely alone in a town full of people who could have helped but chose not to. Curious, the sheriff repeated with a small, knowing smile. You've got your mother's soft heart, kid. Just make sure you're careful where you direct it. The drive home was quiet again. Jennifer seemed lost in thought, her eyes on the road, but her mind clearly elsewhere. Page watched the familiar landmarks roll past. The abandoned silver mine, the historical marker about Tonopah's mining boom, the stretch of desert where wild horses sometimes appeared in the early morning. I know what you're thinking, Jennifer finally said. Page looked over at her mother. What am I thinking? That we were hypocrites in church today, that we preached helping people but didn't help that man yesterday. The accuracy of the observation startled Page into honesty. Kind of, yeah. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost vulnerable. You're not wrong to feel that way. But Page, you have to understand. The world isn't as simple as it seems when you're 8. Sometimes protecting the people you love means making choices that don't feel good or fair. It means erring on the side of caution, even if it makes you look unkind. But he wasn't dangerous, Page insisted. He was nice to me. He told me to go back to you. This time. Jennifer's hands tightened on the wheel again. But what about next time? What about the biker after him, or the stranger after that? I can't risk your safety on the assumption that everyone's good deep down. Some people aren't, baby. And I can't tell the difference just by looking, so I choose to keep you away from situations that could turn bad. Page understood the logic. She even understood the love behind it. But something still felt wrong about the equation, about writing off entire groups of people based on fear rather than evidence. What if you're teaching me to be scared of the wrong things? She asked quietly. What if the scariest thing isn't the people who look different, but becoming someone who stops seeing people as people? Jennifer's breath caught. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Then she pulled the truck over onto the shoulder of the highway, put it in park, and turned to face her daughter fully. When did you get so wise? She asked, her voice thick. I just think about things, Page said with a small shrug. And yesterday, when I talked to that biker, I felt good. I felt like I'd done something right. Even though everyone said it was wrong, it felt right here. She pressed a hand to her chest. Doesn't that matter? It matters. Jennifer reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Page's ear. It matters so much. I'm scared, baby. I'm scared of losing you. You're all I have. You won't lose me by teaching me to be kind. No, Jennifer agreed slowly. No, I guess I won't. They sat there on the side of Highway 95, mother and daughter, while cars occasionally whooshed past, and the desert stretched endless in every direction. Finally, Jennifer put the truck back in gear and pulled onto the road, but something in her expression had shifted, softened maybe, or opened slightly, to a possibility she'd been holding at bay. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. Page did her homework, helped her mother prepare dinner, drew pictures of horses in her sketchbook. But her mind kept returning to Ryan, wondering where he was now, if his motorcycle was running smoothly, if he'd found somewhere friendly to stay, or if he was still navigating a world that judged him before he opened his mouth. That night, as Page brushed her teeth and got ready for bed, Jennifer appeared in the bathroom doorway. I've been thinking about what you said, she began carefully, about teaching you to be kind. And you're right. I don't want to raise you to be afraid of people just because they're different or because they make me nervous. That's not the person I want you to become. Paige rinsed her toothbrush, hope fluttering in her chest. Does that mean... It means I'll try to be more open-minded, not reckless, Jennifer added quickly, not naive, but more willing to see people as individuals rather than categories, okay? Okay, Paige agreed, smiling at her mother in the mirror. Jennifer smiled back, though worry still lingered in her eyes. But you still have to promise me you'll be careful, that you won't approach strangers without me around. Can you do that? I promise. Good. Jennifer kissed the top of her daughter's head. Now get some sleep. School tomorrow. But sleep didn't come easily for Paige that night. She lay in bed, her $50 bill tucked safely in her nightstand drawer, and thought about the strange way the universe worked. She tried to give Ryan her birthday money, and he'd refused. She'd tried to help someone her mother said was dangerous and found only kindness. She'd broken a rule and somehow felt more herself for having done it. The stars outside her window seemed brighter than usual, scattered across the Nevada sky, like seeds waiting to grow into something unexpected. Paige watched them until her eyes grew heavy, and just before sleep took her, she made a wish, not on the stars, but into the quiet darkness of her room. She wished that Ryan, wherever he was, had found people who saw past his vest to the person underneath. She wished that her mother could learn to trust kindness more than fear, and she wished that somehow, some way, she'd get a chance to prove that acting from the heart, even when the world said not to, was never the wrong choice. In the desert night, coyotes called to each other in the distance, and the wind whispered through the sagebrush like an answer to prayers not yet spoken, but already heard. 3 weeks passed. October faded into November, bringing cooler nights and the first hints of winter's approach. Paige returned to the rhythms of third-grade life, spelling tests and recess, arithmetic homework and art class. The encounter at the gas station began to feel like something from a different life, a moment suspended in time that grew hazier with each passing day. But Paige didn't forget. She thought about Ryan often. When her mother complained about difficult customers at the diner, when Pastor Williams talked about compassion at church, when she saw motorcycles passing through town on their way to somewhere else. She wondered if he'd reached wherever he'd been heading. She wondered if other towns had treated him better than Tonopah had. She wondered if he ever thought about the 8-year-old girl who'd tried to give him her birthday money. Life in Tonopah continued its predictable patterns. The sun rose over the desert, bleaching everything pale. Kids went to school, adults went to work. The highway carried people through town, most of them never stopping, just passing through on their way to Reno or Las Vegas, or anywhere more interesting than this speck of civilization in the middle of Nevada's empty quarter. November 8th dawned cold and clear, frost edging the windows of the Thornton house. Paige woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of her mother moving around the kitchen. Saturday morning, no school, her favorite kind of day. She dressed in jeans and a warm sweater, padding out to the kitchen where Jennifer stood at the stove, making pancakes. "Morning, baby," Jennifer said, smiling over her shoulder. "Hungry?" "Starving." Paige climbed onto a stool at the kitchen counter, watching her mother flip pancakes with practiced ease. "Can we go to the library today? Mrs. Patterson said the new horse books came in." "Sure. Let me get some errands done first, then we'll—" The sound cut through the quiet morning like a thunderclap, low, rumbling, powerful. The windows rattled slightly in their frames. Both Paige and Jennifer froze, listening as the sound grew louder, closer, multiplying. Motorcycles, lots of them. Jennifer's face went pale. She set down the spatula and moved quickly to the living room window, pulling back the curtain. Paige followed, her heart suddenly hammering for reasons she couldn't quite name. Fear and excitement tangled together into something electric. The sight that greeted them seemed impossible, Motorcycles lined Desert View Road as far as they could see in both directions. Dozens and dozens of them, maybe more than 100, all coming to a stop in front of the small white house with the broken mailbox. Chrome gleamed in the morning sun. Leather vests adorned every rider. And on each vest, identical patches, the death's head and wings of the Hell's Angels, declaring their brotherhood for anyone to see. "Oh no," Jennifer whispered. "Oh no, no, no." The engines cut off in a wave, leaving sudden, deafening silence in their wake. Riders began dismounting, swinging legs over seats, standing in formation along the road and in the Thorntons' front yard. They didn't approach the house, didn't move threateningly, just stood there, a wall of leather and denim, beards and tattoos, sunglasses glinting in the cold November light. "Mom?" Paige's voice came out small. "What's happening?" "I don't know." Jennifer pulled Paige close, her arms wrapping protectively around her daughter's shoulders. "Stay behind me. Don't go near the door." But even as she spoke, 3 figures detached from the group and began walking up the dirt driveway toward the house. The one in the lead was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark beard threaded with grey, his vest marking him as someone important. More patches than the others, more insignia, more authority radiating from his very presence, and beside him, unmistakable even after 3 weeks, walked Ryan Blackwood. Recognition hit Paige like a physical thing. "Mom, that's him! That's the biker I helped." "What?" Jennifer's grip tightened. "Paige, what are you—" But before she could finish, a knock sounded at the front door, firm but not aggressive, patient rather than demanding. Jennifer and Paige stared at each other, then at the door, then back at each other. "Don't answer it," Jennifer breathed. Another knock, followed by a deep voice calling out, "Mrs. Thornton, my name is Marcus Webb. I'm the chapter president. We're not here to cause trouble, ma'am. We just want to talk to you and your daughter. Please." "Call the sheriff," Jennifer hissed, reaching for her phone. "Mom, wait." Paige grabbed her mother's hand. "Just wait. Listen to what they have to say. Please." "Are you out of your mind? There are over 100 bikers in our yard. And none of them are trying to break in. None of them are being scary. They just knocked politely and asked to talk." Paige looked up at her mother, her green eyes steady despite the fear fluttering in her stomach. What if they really aren't dangerous? What if we're wrong? Jennifer looked torn, her phone in one hand and her daughter's hand in the other, caught between maternal instinct and the faint possibility that everything she'd believed might need reconsidering. Another knock. "Mrs. Thornton, I understand you're scared. But I give you my word, on my life and the lives of every man here, that we mean you and your daughter no harm. We just want 5 minutes. That's all." "Please, Mom," Paige whispered. "Trust me. Trust that feeling I had at the gas station. I was right then." The silence stretched long and terrible. Finally, Jennifer took a shaky breath and nodded once. She moved to the door, checked the peephole, then slowly turned the deadbolt and pulled it open, not all the way, just enough to see out and be seen. 3 men stood on the small concrete porch. The leader, Marcus, was in his early 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that had seen more of the world than most. Ryan stood slightly behind and to the left, his expression careful and unreadable. The third man was younger, maybe mid-20s, with red hair and a nervous energy that suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with whatever was happening here. "Mrs. Thornton," Marcus said, his voice respectful and calm, "thank you for opening the door. I know this looks—" He gestured vaguely at the army of motorcycles behind him. "Intense, but we're not here to threaten or intimidate. We're here to say thank you." Jennifer's brow furrowed in confusion. "Thank you? For what?" "For raising a daughter with more courage and kindness than most adults could manage." Marcus's gaze shifted to Paige, who had pressed herself against her mother's side to peer around the partially opened door. "Is this the young lady?" That's her, Ryan said quietly, a smile touching his lips. Hey, Paige. Hi, Paige managed, her voice barely audible. Marcus crouched down slowly, bringing himself closer to Paige's eye level. Paige, my name is Marcus. 3 weeks ago, you met my brother Ryan when he was stranded with a broken bike. You tried to give him your birthday money to help him out. Do you remember that? Paige nodded. Ryan told us about what you did, about how you saw him struggling and decided to help even though your mama had warned you not to, even though you were scared, even though everyone in this town treated him like he was invisible or dangerous or both. You saw a person in need and chose kindness. That means something to us. That means everything to us. Tears pricked at Paige's eyes, though she wasn't entirely sure why. Jennifer's arm around her shoulders remained tense, protective, but she hadn't closed the door. When Ryan told us your story, Marcus continued, every member of our chapter wanted to come, wanted to meet the little girl brave enough to stand up for one of our brothers when nobody else would. So here we are, 115 of us, to say thank you properly and to make sure you know that you've got friends now, friends who don't forget. Friends, Jennifer repeated, her voice strange. You brought over 100 bikers to my house to say you're friends with my 8-year-old daughter. Yes, Mom, Marcus said simply, standing back up, because in our world, loyalty means something, brotherhood means something. And when someone shows kindness to one of us, especially when it costs them something, we don't forget. Ever. Ryan stepped forward slightly. Mrs. Thornton, I know how this looks. I know what you probably think of us. But your daughter did something that night that reminded me why I ride, why I wear this patch. She saw past the leather to the person underneath. Most people can't or won't do that. The fact that she could, at 8 years old, after being told not to, when she had every reason to be scared, that's special. That deserves recognition. Jennifer's expression had shifted from pure fear to something more complex. Still wary, but also uncertain, caught between her prejudices and the evidence standing peacefully on her porch. What exactly do you want? She asked carefully. Just to give Paige something, Marcus replied. He nodded to the young man with red hair who held up a small gift bag decorated with stars and ribbons. Nothing scary, I promise. Just some art supplies, since Ryan mentioned she likes to draw, and a card signed by everyone here, so she knows she's got a whole family of bikers who've got her back if she ever needs anything. A family, Jennifer said faintly. That's what we are, Mom. We're brothers and sisters bonded by choice rather than blood. And when someone shows kindness to our family, they become part of it. That's not a threat, it's a promise. Paige has friends now, real friends, the kind who show up when it matters. Paige looked up at her mother, her eyes shining with tears that were no longer from fear, but from something deeper, something that felt like validation and recognition and belonging all mixed together. Can I accept it? Jennifer looked down at her daughter, and in that moment something crumbled in her expression, a wall she'd built from fear and prejudice and the deep, primal need to protect her child. Maybe she saw the truth in Marcus's eyes. Maybe she saw the genuine respect Ryan showed. Maybe she just finally heard what Paige had been trying to tell her for 3 weeks. Okay, she whispered, then louder, okay, yes. Marcus's smile transformed his whole face, making him look younger and infinitely less intimidating. Thank you. Ryan, would you like to do the honors? Ryan took the gift bag and crouched down again, meeting Paige's eyes directly. You did a good thing that night. You reminded me that there's still good people in this world. This is just a small way of saying we see you, we appreciate you, and we won't forget you, okay? Paige took the bag with trembling hands, peeking inside to see professional art supplies, real colored pencils, not the cheap kind, sketch pads with thick paper, charcoal sticks, erasers, everything an aspiring artist could want. And beneath it all, a card covered in signatures and short messages. Keep being brave, Marcus. The world needs more people like you. Danny. Never stop being kind. Sarah. You're honorary Hell's Angels now. Over
Jake.
100 signatures filled the card, each one a promise, each one a connection to someone who'd been moved by a child's simple act of compassion. Thank you, Paige whispered, clutching the bag like it was the most precious thing she'd ever received. Thank you, Ryan countered gently. You gave me something worth more than money that night. You gave me hope. That's not something I find often in places like this. Jennifer had tears running down her face now, silent streams she didn't bother to wipe away. I was so wrong, she said, her voice breaking. I taught her to be afraid of you. I told her you were dangerous. You were protecting your daughter, Marcus interrupted kindly. That's not wrong, Mom. That's being a good mother. And for what it's worth, you clearly did something right if you raised a kid who had the courage to go against what you taught her when her conscience said to. That takes a strong character. You should be proud. I am, Jennifer said, pulling Paige close. I really am. Good. Marcus straightened up and addressed both of them. We're going to head out now. We've made our point and said our piece. But before we go, I want you both to know, if you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call us. Ryan's going to leave his number. Bike breaks down, car won't start, some jerk bothering you, doesn't matter. You're family now. And we take care of family. He reached into his vest and pulled out a business card, simple, black, with white lettering, and handed it to Jennifer. She took it numbly, staring at the phone number like it was written in a foreign language. Is that really how it works? Paige asked, her voice stronger now. I'm family. Honorary member, Ryan confirmed with a wink. Youngest one we've ever had too. You should feel pretty special about that. I do, Paige said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The three men on the porch stepped back, preparing to leave. But before they turned away fully, Paige called out, Ryan? He paused, looking back. Did you ever get where you were going? That night with the broken bike? Ryan's smile was soft and genuine. I did. Took a little longer than planned, but I got there, thanks to a certain brave girl who reminded me not to give up. Then they were walking back down the driveway, rejoining the massive gathering of bikers who had remained motionless and silent during the entire exchange. As Marcus approached, someone near the front raised a fist in the air. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, every single biker had one fist raised in a silent salute, not threatening, not aggressive, but respectful, honoring. Paige stepped out onto the porch, Jennifer's hand firm on her shoulder, and raised her own small fist in return. The salute held for a long moment, a tableau of mutual respect and understanding that transcended words or explanations. Then, as one, the bikers lowered their arms and began mounting their motorcycles. Engines roared to life again, that powerful rumbling sound that had announced their arrival. Marcus, astride a massive chrome and black Harley, called out one final time over the noise. Remember, Paige Thornton, we don't forget. She waved, and he waved back. Then the motorcycles began to move, pulling away from the small white house in formation, a river of leather and chrome flowing back onto Highway 95 and disappearing into the Nevada morning like they'd never been there at all. Except they had been. And nothing would ever be quite the same again. Jennifer and Paige stood on the porch long after the last engine sound faded, staring at the empty road where 115 bikers had stood minutes before. The gift bag hung from Paige's hand, tangible proof that it had all been real. I can't believe that just happened, Jennifer finally said. I can, Paige replied quietly. I knew he was good. I knew they all could be. Everyone just needed to look. Jennifer laughed, but it was watery, choked with emotion. You were right. You were so right, and I was so wrong. You weren't wrong, Paige said generously. You were scared. That's different. When did you get so wise? Jennifer asked, not for the first time. Paige just shrugged, but inside she felt something solid and true settling into place, a certainty about who she was and who she wanted to become. She'd taken a risk 3 weeks ago, chosen kindness over fear, and the world had rewarded that choice in ways she never could have imagined. "Come on," Jennifer said, guiding her daughter back inside. "Your pancakes are getting cold." But as they ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, the gift bag sitting prominently between them, Jennifer kept glancing at the business card Marcus had given her. Finally, she picked it up and studied it seriously. "You know what?" she said slowly. "I think we should frame this as a reminder." A reminder of what? That the scariest thing isn't people who look different from us. It's becoming someone who stops seeing people as people. "Va?" Jennifer smiled, tears still glistening on her cheeks. "Someone very wise told me that recently." Paige smiled back, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the tightness in her chest that she hadn't known was there finally loosened and released. Outside, the November sun climbed higher in the cloudless sky, warming the desert and bringing life to the endless expanse of sagebrush and sand. Somewhere on Highway 95, 115 motorcycles roared south, carrying their riders back to lives and homes and the brotherhood that defined them. And in a small white house with a broken mailbox, a mother and daughter sat together over cold pancakes and talked about prejudice and reality, about courage and kindness, and about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust your heart when the whole world tells you not to. The desert wind whispered through Tonopah, carrying the sound of distant engines and the scent of desert sage, and for once the whisper sounded almost like laughter. The universe pleased with itself for proving that some stories really do have happy endings. The news spread through Tonopah faster than fire through dry grass. By Monday morning, everyone in town had heard some version of what happened on Saturday. The army of bikers descending on Desert View Road, the confrontation that wasn't a confrontation, the gift given to an 8-year-old girl who'd shown kindness to a stranger. As with all small-town gossip, the story mutated as it traveled. Some versions had 200 bikers. Some insisted there had been shouting and threats. Some claimed Jennifer had called the sheriff and been told not to worry because the Hells Angels were actually okay. But underneath all the embellishment and distortion, the core truth remained. Paige Thornton had helped a stranded biker, and he'd come back with his entire chapter to say thank you. At Desert Valley Elementary School, Paige became a minor celebrity overnight. Kids who'd barely noticed her before suddenly wanted to sit with her at lunch, hear the story firsthand, see the art supplies the bikers had given her. Teachers looked at her differently, some with approval, some with concern, all with curiosity. During recess on Monday, Paige found herself surrounded by a cluster of 3rd and 4th graders, all asking questions at once. Were you scared? Did they have guns? How many were there really? What did your mum say? Are they your friends now? Paige answered as best she could, trying to convey the reality without embellishment. Yes, she'd been nervous. No, she hadn't seen any weapons. There were 115 exactly. Her mom had been scared at first, but changed her mind. And yes, in a way, they were her friends now. That's so cool, breathed Melissa, a girl from Paige's class with blonde braids and a gap-toothed smile. My dad says Hell's Angels are criminals. They're not, Paige said firmly. They're just people. People who look scary, maybe, but people who keep their promises and remember kindness. That's more than a lot of regular people do. The group fell silent, processing this. Then Tommy, a boy known more for his baseball skills than his academics, spoke up. My uncle's a biker. Not Hell's Angels, but another club. He's not a criminal either. He's actually really nice. But everyone treats him like he's dangerous, just because of how he looks. That's not fair, Paige said. No, Tommy agreed. It's not. The conversation rippled outward from there. Kids sharing stories about relatives or neighbors who didn't fit the stereotypes people assigned them. A Muslim girl talked about her father being watched suspiciously in stores. A boy with two dads mentioned the stares his family got at church functions. A Native American student described the assumptions people made about her family based on nothing but their heritage. Paige listened to all of it, recognizing the common thread, judgment based on appearance or affiliation rather than character or action. It was the same thing that had happened to Ryan, the same thing that happened everywhere, all the time, to people who didn't fit into whatever narrow definition of normal a community had decided on. Maybe we should start our own club, Melissa suggested suddenly, the Don't Judge People Club. That's a terrible name, Tommy said, but he was smiling. The Kindness Club? Better. How about just being kind without making it a club? Paige offered quietly. Just choosing to see people as people, every time, every person. The kids nodded, and though Paige doubted they'd all remember this conversation by next week, she hoped some of them would. She hoped that maybe, in some small way, what had happened Saturday morning would ripple out through Tonopah and change more than just her own family's perspective. At lunch, she sat with her usual friends, but the table next to them, usually occupied by the cool fifth graders, kept glancing over and whispering. Finally, their unofficial leader, a tall boy named Jared with expensive sneakers and an attitude to match, walked over. "Hey," he said to Paige, his tone carefully neutral, "that thing with the bikers, that was pretty brave." Paige looked up, surprised. Jared had never spoken to her before except to tell her to move out of his way. "Thanks. My dad said your mom must be stupid to let you talk to strangers like that." The table went silent. Paige felt her friends tense beside her, ready to defend her. But before anyone could speak, Paige set down her sandwich and looked Jared directly in the eyes. "My mom isn't stupid. She was scared because she'd been taught to be scared, just like a lot of people. But she listened to me, and she changed her mind when she saw the truth. That's not stupid. That's brave, too. Maybe even braver than what I did." Jared blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct response from a third grader. "Whatever," he muttered. But he walked away without further comment, and Paige noticed his ears had turned red. "You're kind of a hero now," her friend Dakota said, sounding impressed. "I'm not a hero," Paige corrected. "I just did what felt right." "Isn't that what heroes do?" Paige considered this, then shrugged. "Maybe. But if it is, then everyone can be a hero. You don't need superpowers or special training. You just need to choose kindness when it's easier not to." The rest of the school day passed in a blur of attention and whispered conversations. By the time Jennifer picked her up in the parking lot, Paige was exhausted from being the center of so much focus. "How was school?" Jennifer asked as Paige climbed into the truck. "Weird," Paige admitted. "Everyone wants to talk about Saturday. Everyone has opinions." "I know the feeling." Jennifer pulled out of the parking lot, her expression rueful. "The diner was packed today. Everyone wanted to hear the story directly from me. Martha Brennan asked me at least 5 times if I was sure the bikers hadn't threatened us." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That they were respectful, kind, and genuine. That they came to say thank you, not to intimidate. That we'd been wrong about them." Jennifer glanced at her daughter. "Not everyone wanted to hear that, but I said it anyway." "Are people mad at you?" "Some are confused. Some are defensive because it challenges what they believe, but some—" Jennifer's voice softened. "Some are thinking about it, really thinking about it. I saw it in their eyes, doubt about their own prejudices, curiosity about what else they might be wrong about. That's something." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, watching the desert landscape roll past. Then Jennifer spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "You know what I realized today? I've been teaching you to be afraid of the wrong things. I've been so focused on protecting you from imaginary dangers that I almost made you afraid to be yourself, afraid to trust your own judgment, afraid to be kind because kindness might be risky. You were just being a mom," Paige said loyally. "Maybe, but I want to be a better mom, the kind who teaches you to be brave, not scared. The kind who encourages you to trust your conscience, even when it goes against what everyone else says." "You are that kind of mom," Paige insisted. "You let me keep the art supplies. You listen to what Marcus said. You're thinking about things differently. That's being brave." Jennifer's eyes glistened with tears, but she was smiling. "When did you get so wise?" "You keep asking me that," Paige said with a laugh, "because it keeps surprising me." Mut. Jennifer reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm proud of you, baby. So incredibly proud." The week that followed brought more changes to Tonopah than anyone expected. Jennifer began questioning other assumptions she'd held, other judgments she'd made without evidence. She struck up a conversation with the homeless man who sometimes panhandled outside Miller's and learned he was a veteran with PTSD struggling to get back on his feet. She smiled at the teenage boys with baggy pants and loud music instead of crossing the street to avoid them. She realized that fear had been making her decisions for so long that she'd forgotten how to make them for herself. At church that Sunday, Pastor Williams mentioned the events on Desert View Road in his sermon, not explicitly but clearly enough that everyone knew what he was referencing. He talked about the Good Samaritan again, but this time with a different emphasis. "Sometimes," he said, his voice carrying through the small sanctuary, "the people we think need saving are actually the ones doing the saving. Sometimes the people we've been taught to fear are the ones who end up teaching us about grace. God works through unexpected vessels, beloved. He always has. Maybe it's time we stopped being surprised by that and started looking for the divine in places we've been too afraid to look before." Martha Brennan shifted uncomfortably in her pew. Sheriff Dawson stared at his hands. The Morrison family exchanged glances, and Jennifer reached over and took Paige's hand, squeezing it gently in silent understanding. After the service, several people approached Jennifer and Paige, some to express support, some to ask questions, some just to say they'd been thinking about what happened, and it had changed something in how they saw the world. "I judged those bikers without knowing them," Mrs. Chen admitted quietly. "Just like I've been judged for being Asian in a mostly white town. I should have known better. Thank you for the reminder." Mr. Foster, the auto shop owner, told Paige he'd started a fund to help stranded motorists passing through Tonopah, something he'd never thought to do before, but now seemed obvious. "Anyone can have car trouble," he said. "Doesn't matter what they look like or where they're from. They deserve help." Even Sheriff Dawson pulled Jennifer aside with an awkward apology. "I might have been too quick to encourage that biker to move along. Maybe if more people had given him a chance to prove himself, things would have gone different. I'll try to be more aware of that going forward." The changes were small, individual, personal, but they were real. Tonopah didn't transform overnight into some utopian community free of prejudice. That wasn't realistic. But something had shifted, a crack in the foundation of unexamined assumptions that had supported the town's social structure for decades. And at the center of it all was Paige, who'd simply chosen kindness and trusted her heart. 2 weeks after the biker's visit, a package arrived at the Thornton house. Inside was a leather jacket, child-sized, beautifully crafted, with a custom patch on the back reading, "Honorary Little Sister," surrounded by the Hell's Angels' death's head and wings. A note from Marcus was tucked inside. "Paige, we wanted you to have something to remember us by. You don't have to wear it if your mom says no, But know that it comes with a promise. You're part of our family now. We protect our family, always. Stay brave, stay kind. The world needs more people like you. Marcus Webb and the entire chapter. Jennifer examined the jacket carefully, running her fingers over the quality leather and intricate stitching. Paige held her breath, waiting for her mother's reaction. Part of her expected Jennifer to refuse it, to say it was too much, or sent the wrong message, or invited the wrong kind of attention. Instead, Jennifer helped Paige try it on. It fit perfectly. The leather was soft and supple, already broken in. The patches gleamed in the afternoon light streaming through the living room window. Paige looked at herself in the mirror and saw something new in her reflection. Not just a little girl anymore, but someone who'd made a choice that mattered, someone who'd stood up for what she believed in, someone who'd been recognized and honored for that stand. "What do you think?" she asked her mother nervously. Jennifer's eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "I think you look like someone who knows who she is and isn't afraid to show it. I think you look perfect." Paige wore the jacket to school the next day. Some kids stared, some asked questions, some parents picking up their children later gave Jennifer pointed looks. But Paige walked through it all with her head high and her conscience clear, and that made all the difference. At lunch, Tommy approached her table again. "That's a really cool jacket," he said. "Thanks. It was a gift." "From the bikers?" "Yeah." Tommy nodded slowly, processing. Then, "You know what? My uncle's going to love hearing about this, about a kid getting recognized by the Hells Angels for being kind. He's always saying the world needs to see bikers differently, that they're not all criminals and troublemakers. You're kind of proof of that." "Tell him I said hi," Paige offered, "and that not all kids are afraid of bikers either." "I will." The conversation reminded Paige of something Marcus had said, that loyalty and brotherhood were about more than just club members. They were about recognizing kindness wherever it appeared and honoring it publicly. The Hells Angels hadn't just given Paige art supplies and a jacket. They'd given her a platform, a story, proof that choosing compassion could create ripples that extended far beyond the initial act. As November faded into December and winter settled over Nevada's high desert, the story of Paige Thornton and the 115 bikers became part of Tonopah's collective memory. It was told and retold, refined and embellished, passed down as both a parable and a historical fact. Some people learned from it, some dismissed it, some held on to their prejudices despite the evidence. But that was okay. Paige had learned that you couldn't change everyone's mind, couldn't force people to see past their fear if they weren't ready. All you could do was be the change yourself and hope it inspired others to follow. The $50 remained in Paige's nightstand drawer, unspent. She'd decided to keep it as a reminder, not of what she'd almost done, but of what she'd learned. That sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't money or possessions, but dignity, recognition, the simple acknowledgement of their humanity. Ryan called once, 2 weeks before Christmas, just to check in and see how she was doing. Jennifer answered the phone, and after the initial shock wore off, she had a genuine, warm conversation with him about life, family, the challenges of raising kids with good values in a complicated world. When she handed the phone to Paige, Ryan's voice was gentle and familiar. "Hey, little sister, how's it going?" "Good," Paige said, smiling at the nickname. "School's good. Art's good. Everything's good. I heard you wore the jacket. That took guts." "Not really, it's just a jacket." "It's not, though," Ryan countered softly. "It's a statement. You're telling everyone that you're not afraid to associate with people they've decided are bad, that you're willing to be judged for the company you keep. That's brave, Paige. Don't downplay it." "Okay," she agreed, because when he put it that way, maybe it was brave. "Are you doing okay?" "Better than okay. Thanks to you, actually. That night at the gas station, I was pretty close to giving up on people." thinking maybe all the judgment and suspicion was deserved. Maybe I should just accept being seen as a monster. But then you came over with your birthday money and your big heart, and you reminded me why I keep trying, why I keep believing people are good deep down. You gave me hope. I just wanted to say thank you for that. Paige felt tears prick her eyes. You're welcome. Take care of yourself, little sister. And remember, you've got 115 brothers and sisters who've got your back. Always. I'll remember. After she hung up, Paige sat with the phone in her lap, feeling the weight of connection and belonging. She thought about all the things she'd learned in the past 2 months, about prejudice and reality, about fear and courage, about the way kindness could create bonds stronger than blood or shared history. The world was bigger and more complex than she'd known at the start of October. People were harder to categorize, more nuanced, capable of surprising you in both good and bad ways. But underneath all the complexity, some truths remained simple. Kindness mattered. Seeing people as people mattered. Choosing compassion over convenience mattered. These truths would guide her forward, through the rest of 3rd grade and beyond, through the challenges and choices that awaited her as she grew. They were the foundation Marcus and Ryan and the entire chapter had helped her recognize and claim, not by teaching her something new, but by validating what she'd already known in her heart. That night, as Paige got ready for bed, Jennifer came to tuck her in, something she usually only did on special occasions now that Paige was getting older. "I've been thinking," Jennifer said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "about that day at the gas station, about how you wanted to help Ryan and I wouldn't let you." "Mom, it's okay." "Let me finish," Jennifer interrupted gently. "I was wrong. Not just about him, but about the lesson I was teaching you. I was teaching you that safety comes from avoiding people who seem different or scary, but real safety comes from good judgment, from trusting your instincts, from knowing the difference between actual danger and fear disguised as caution." Paige listened quietly, watching her mother struggle with words that clearly mattered deeply. "You have good instincts," Jennifer continued. "Better than mine, apparently. You saw Ryan and recognized something I couldn't, that he was just a person having a hard day, that he needed help, that his appearance didn't define his character. From now on, I'm going to trust your judgment more, and I'm going to work on my own." "Deal?" "Deal," Paige agreed, smiling. Jennifer kissed her forehead, then stood to leave. But at the doorway, she paused. "Hey, Paige. Yeah? I'm really glad you're my daughter. And I'm really glad you didn't listen to me that day." Then she was gone, leaving Paige alone in the darkness, with a heart full of love and a mind full of hope. Outside, the December wind whispered through the desert, carrying the scent of coming snow and the promise of winter's transformation. Stars filled the Nevada sky, countless and bright, each one a reminder that even in vast darkness, small lights mattered. Paige pulled her blankets up to her chin and closed her eyes, drifting toward sleep with a smile on her face. Somewhere out there, Ryan and Marcus and 113 other bikers were living their lives, carrying the memory of a little girl who'd chosen kindness when the world said not to. And in a small white house with a broken mailbox in Tonopah, Nevada, that little girl slept peacefully, her leather jacket hanging in the closet like a medal, her art supplies waiting for tomorrow's creativity, her heart settled and certain in the knowledge that she'd done something right, something that mattered, something that would ripple outward in ways she might never fully see but could trust were real nonetheless. Because that's what kindness did, that's what compassion accomplished. That's what happened when you chose to see people as people, when you trusted your heart over your fear, when you had the courage to be yourself, even when being yourself meant standing alone. The world changed, slowly, imperfectly, one person at a time. And Paige Thornton, 8 years old and braver than most adults would ever be, had helped change it. That was worth more than all the birthday money in the world.